Tucker Carlson just revealed something that exposes his entire career as a fraud. In 1999, he was attacking Pat Buchanan for talking about immigration and the Israel lobby. In 2024, he's attacking Nick Fuentes for the exact same topics. 25 years apart, identical smear tactics, identical language, identical agenda. This isn't coincidence. This is a carefully orchestrated gatekeeping operation that's been running for decades. Tucker wants you to think he's evolved, that he's become some kind of truth-telling maverick. But when you see the pattern, you realize he's been running the same playbook his entire career.
I think that people should be allowed to have differing views on immigration. I think people should be allowed to point out the fact that there is an Israeli lobby, and yes, it's powerful, and debate the merits of that, I guess. I don't think there's, strictly speaking, anything wrong with that. But again, I think Pat Buchanan is part of the reason it's so hard to have that conversation, because he discredits it by his presence.
Right here, Tucker reveals his entire modus operandi. Notice the setup. He starts by acknowledging that immigration and Israeli lobby discussions are legitimate topics. He's not denying the issues exist. He's not saying they shouldn't be discussed. Instead, he's doing something much more sophisticated and dangerous. He's creating a framework where the topics can be discussed, but only by the right people, in the right way, within acceptable boundaries. This is classic controlled opposition gatekeeping. Tucker positions himself as reasonable and open-minded while simultaneously poisoning the well against anyone who goes too far outside the approved narrative. Pat Buchanan wasn't wrong about immigration or Israeli influence. He was just too effective at reaching regular Americans with these ideas.
Because he gives people who watch him carefully the sense that he has another agenda that has to do with personal dislike, and that he believes in conspiracies, and that he believes that the Jews are this sinister, secretly organized force trying to affect American politics. And those aren't discussions I think normal people, sober people, should be having, because I think they're ludicrous.
This is where Tucker's gatekeeping becomes most obvious. He's not engaging with Buchanan's actual arguments about immigration policy or documented Israeli lobbying activities. Instead, he's psychoanalyzing Buchanan's motivations and suggesting that anyone who notices Jewish influence in politics must be motivated by personal dislike rather than legitimate policy concerns. This is a classic deflection tactic. Instead of addressing the substance of the arguments, Tucker shifts the focus to the character and motivations of the person making them. The phrase, normal people, is particularly revealing. Tucker is positioning himself as the arbiter of what normal Americans should be discussing, effectively creating boundaries around acceptable political discourse.
Anyway, who is this kid exactly? Mm-hmm. And maybe it's just an accident that the guy exclusively goes after people who are in the same, roughly the same. And then he gets up there and he's making Holocaust jokes. And it's is it possible that this is like David Duke? David Duke, every time I had a new show, David Duke would endorse my show. I don't know, who the hell is David Duke? Well, David Duke is obviously part of a campaign to discredit people on the right, obviously. Mm. And I think it's very obvious that Nick Fuentes is exactly the same. Doesn't mean everything he says is false. It doesn't mean he's not talented. He's enormously talented. Doesn't mean he's a bad person. I'm not attacking him personally, but he is clearly part of a campaign to discredit non-crazy right voices. That's obvious to me. I've been around a long time. I know it when I see it.
The exact same playbook, 25 years later. Tucker isn't denying that Fuentes is talented or that his arguments have merit. He's doing something much more insidious. He's suggesting that Fuentes is intentionally discrediting legitimate conservative voices by association. This is the same argument he made about Pat Buchanan in 1999. The pattern is unmistakable. Whenever someone on the right gets too close to uncomfortable truths about immigration, foreign influence, or demographic change, Tucker emerges to suggest they're either crazy, secretly working for the other side, or somehow damaging the respectable, conservative movement. It's not about the truth or falsity of their arguments. It's about maintaining boundaries around acceptable discourse. This David Duke comparison reveals Tucker's sophisticated understanding of how controlled opposition works. He's acknowledging that there are people whose job it is to discredit legitimate conservative voices by associating with them or endorsing them. But what Tucker won't admit is that he himself is part of this same system, just operating from the other direction. While David Duke's role is to make nationalist ideas look extreme and fringe, Tucker's role is to make establishment conservatism look rebellious and edgy while keeping it safely within approved boundaries. Both are serving the same function of preventing genuine nationalist movements from gaining mainstream acceptance. What we're seeing here isn't Tucker Carlson evolving or changing his views over time. This is the same person running the same operation for 25 years. In 1999, Pat Buchanan was getting too close to uncomfortable truths about immigration and foreign influence, so Tucker emerged to discredit him. In 2025, Nick Fuentes is getting too close to the same uncomfortable truths, so Tucker is running the exact same playbook. The sophistication of Tucker's operation is in how he positions himself. He never denies that immigration is a problem or that foreign lobbying exists. He acknowledges these issues are real and legitimate. But then he creates this elaborate framework where discussing these issues is only acceptable if you do it in a way that doesn't threaten the existing power structure. Anyone who gets too effective at reaching regular Americans with these ideas suddenly becomes part of a campaign to discredit non-crazy right voices. Tucker's genius is that he's managed to build a career as a truth teller while consistently attacking the people who tell the most uncomfortable truths. He talks about immigration, but only in ways that don't threaten the donor class who benefit from cheap labor. He criticizes foreign wars, but only after they've already been launched and become unpopular. He discusses Israeli influence, but only in the context of attacking people who discuss it too effectively. The most insidious aspect of Tucker's gatekeeping is how he uses the language of reasonableness and respectability to enforce boundaries. He doesn't say these topics can't be discussed, that would be too obvious. Instead, he says they can only be discussed by respectable people in appropriate ways. Anyone who steps outside these boundaries gets labeled as crazy, suspicious, or part of some shadowy campaign to discredit legitimate conservatives. This is how controlled opposition works in practice. You don't need to completely suppress uncomfortable ideas. You just need to make sure they're only discussed in ways that don't threaten existing power structures. Tucker has been performing this function for decades, and his recent evolution is just the latest iteration of the same basic operation. The fact that Tucker is using identical language and tactics against Fuentes that he used against Buchanan 25 years ago proves that this isn't organic evolution. It's a consistent, long-term strategy to control the boundaries of acceptable right-wing discourse. Tucker isn't fighting the system, he is the system's immune response to genuine nationalist movements. Tucker Carlson represents the most sophisticated form of controlled opposition in modern American politics. Unlike obvious establishment figures who simply defend the status quo, Tucker positions himself as a rebel while consistently working to neutralize actual rebellion. His 25-year pattern of attacking effective nationalist voices while claiming to support their underlying concerns reveals a calculated strategy to control right-wing discourse. The genius of Tucker's operation is that he gives his audience the feeling of rebellion without the substance. He allows people to feel like they're hearing forbidden truths while ensuring those truths never coalesce into effective political action. By consistently discrediting the most effective voices on immigration and foreign influence, Tucker serves as a pressure release valve that prevents genuine populist energy from threatening existing power structures. Tucker's career isn't about truth-telling, it's about truth management. He determines which uncomfortable realities can be discussed, by whom, and within what boundaries. Anyone who steps outside those boundaries gets the Pat Buchanan treatment, regardless of how accurate their arguments might be. This is how the establishment maintains control in an era when their narratives are increasingly difficult to defend. They don't suppress opposition voices, they manage them.